Salvete. In this lesson on adjectives, we'll talk about placement, about agreement with first declension masculine nouns, and about substantives. So placement will be pretty simple. The big thing to know there is that an adjective may go either before or after the noun it modifies. For example, you could write the good boy as bonus puer or puer bonus, and both would be equally correct. Now talking about agreement, the first declension masculine nouns agricola, poeta, and nauta will require some special attention. This is because even though they themselves belong to the first declension, each of these three nouns is masculine. Because of that, the adjectives that modify them will still follow the us, I, o pattern because they are modifying a masculine noun. So what this means is that they will not have the same ending. This is why we've never said that they match in endings, but rather we say that adjectives and nouns agree in gender, case, and number. Because even with phrases like bonorum poetarum, the two words of this phrase may have different endings, one with orum, the other with arum, but they will still have the same gender, that is masculine, the same number, plural, and the same case, genitive. So for instance, we would say bonus poeta instead of bona poeta. Poeta is first declension, it'll have that a ending, but since it's masculine, its adjective will have the us ending. Let's try doing this in a chart and declining bonus poeta all the way through. Once again, we'll make our extra wide chart. The first two entries in this chart would be bonus poeta and boni poetae. Notice that poeta is first declension, so it still goes I, but since poeta is masculine, then the adjective modifying it will follow the us, I pattern. Try to decline the rest of this on your own. If you declined it correctly, you should have gotten bonus poeta, boni poetae, bono poetae, bonum poetam, bono poeta. In the plural, boni poetae, bonorum poetarum, bonis poetis, bonos poetas, bonis poetis. Now let's talk about the word substantives. What a substantive is an adjective that does not have a noun that it agrees with in the sentence, and it is used to imply a generic noun after it. To get a better handle on this, let's think about some examples of substantives in English. One example of a substantive in English that is an adjective with an implied generic noun after it would be in nationalities. So for instance, if we talked about the British or the French, after we say the British or the French, it implies a noun like the British people, the French men, the Spanish women. It implies some sort of a person afterwards. Likewise, in song or movie titles or song lyrics. For instance, there is a Clint Eastwood movie, The Good, The Bad, and The Ugly. That title tells you that this movie is about good people, bad people, and ugly people. Each of these implies people after it. Likewise, Billy Joel's song, Only the Good Die Young. It's understood that when we say only the good die young, we're not talking about good blankets, we're not talking about good lamps, we're not talking about good doors, we are talking about good people. Only good people die young. Likewise, with indefinite pronouns in English. If we say, few have known that, something, 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 all know that, some know that, etc. These indefinite pronouns in English have an implied people after them. Few people have known, all people know that, some people know that, etc., etc. And so what all this means is that when we're translating from Latin into English and we see these substantives and we identify them as adjectives which don't have a noun which they agree with in the sentence, we'll have to provide a generic noun after them in English. If the adjective is masculine, we'll have to provide either men or people. because if Latin was referring to a mixed group of men and women, like people, they would use the masculine grammatical gender. If we see a feminine substantive, we would supply women, and if we see a neuter substantive, we'll supply things. So for instance, if we saw the Latin sentence, boni sunt in agris, we'll diagram it first. We can see that sunt is a verb, in agris is a prep phrase, and boni is hanging out without modifying any other noun in the sentence. So we take it on its own as though it's a noun. So we'll underline it once as the subject, and then we'll translate it as the good are in the fields. But that doesn't really make much sense in English yet. So since boni is plural and it's masculine, we'll say the good what are in the fields. If you answered correctly, you would say that good men are in the fields. If we saw boni sunt in agris with a feminine adjective, we would translate this slightly differently. We would still have are in the fields, but then we wouldn't say the good men, but we would say the good women. The last thing to do will be to get out our best friends, and right below constructions, we'll see a section where it says adjectives must agree with the nouns they modify in blank, blank, and blank. There, we'll fill in gender, case, and number. That's all for today, and we'll practice this more the next time we see each other in class. Bye later!